Stephanie Dobson is back with us this week. Stephanie is a lawyer and mediator at Hankett Divorce Law and Mediation here in Lloydminster. And we're back with another episode of Healthy, Thriving Family After Divorce. So, Stephanie, we have been talking about child support over the past few episodes. We're going to continue that today, talking about something called shared parenting. So let's get started by explaining what exactly shared parenting is.
Sure. So shared parenting in essence is describing a certain allocation of parenting time between two parents after separation or divorce. So it goes by percentage under the child support guidelines. So it's where both parents have at least 40% of the time with the children over the span of an entire year. It used to be called shared custody under the old legislation. That's prior to March of 2021, but we've updated it. It's now called shared parenting. So given that this is calculated on an annual basis, parents can literally get down to the number of minutes in a year. So we're not just talking about, sharing of parenting equally over the summertime and the rest of the year not. So we can even get down to the minutes. There's 525,600 minutes in a calendar year. So, we can get as detailed as that. So when we're creating a parenting schedule the legislation doesn't necessarily provide for a presumption in favor of this shared 60-40 or 50-50 parenting. It just more talks about the quality of the parenting relationship with the children.
So let's talk about child support and how does it work when there is a shared parenting arrangement?
So our viewers may remember from our past episode that child support is calculated based on what's called the child support guidelines. So these are either federally or provincially regulated. So shared parenting actually has a special section all to itself. It's under what's called Section 9 of the child support guidelines. So first, when we look to calculate child support for shared parenting, there's 3 points to consider. So the first one, we look at the child support formulas. So in the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about that base amount of support. And in shared parenting, we call it a set-off approach. So what we do is we do the calculations as if the kids are living full-time with mom, and what would dad pay to mom? And then we do the opposite. What would mom pay to dad if dad had the kids full-time or in a non-shared parenting arrangement? So then if dad would pay to mom $500 a month and mom would pay to dad $300 a month, then we take the difference between those two. So that's what's called the set-off, or it's the mathematical calculation way to figure out child support for shared parenting. Now, that's not where we stop. That's just the starting point. So the next 2 factors that we look at in the guidelines is what I call the flexibility sections. So that just says that we can't just use that first way of the pure math. We actually have to look at the circumstances surrounding shared parenting. So first, we look at any increased cost of shared parenting. So you're not just parenting every other weekend for a few hours or for the whole weekend. You're actually setting up your home to be more of a 50-50 equal arrangement. The second thing we look at is what we call the conditions, means, needs, and other circumstances. Of course, that's a mouthful, but that's all from the legislation. And we look at that for each spouse and for the children for whom support is sought.
Would there be any tax implications with this?
Well, under the shared parenting legislation, that legislation is slightly different than the pure tax consideration. So what we want to look at is 2 different pieces. So one is the CCB, so it's Canada Child Benefit, and the other one is the AED credit. That's the amount for eligible dependents. So let's first look at the CCB rules. So that under the Income Tax Act, one of the keys to what they call shared custody or shared parenting is that the children are residing with one parent with a parent on an equal or near equal basis. So there's no specific percentage, but if it's equal or near equal, then each parent is eligible to actually receive half of their CCB entitlement. So each month, instead of receiving $300, you'd receive $150, and then the other parent would be the same. So the second one is the AED credit. Again, that's the amount for eligible dependents. So that's where people will talk about claiming a child on their taxes. So there's 2 criteria if you want to claim this credit. First, you need to be unmarried or separated. And the second one is you need to maintain what's called a self-contained domestic establishment where you support a dependent. So of course, if you only have one child, then you need to figure out which parent is going to claim the children on which year. But you have to make sure that you qualify for claiming a child on your taxes.
All right, Stephanie. Well, good information as usual. Thank you so much. And we'll be back again to chat with you next week.
Yeah, thanks, Stacey.